Hi, this is Aqueela Maddox again, the Chief Inspirational Officer of Belief LLC. And today I want to talk to you about the power in separation. Oftentimes we have relationships in our life that we value so much, but they may change. And a person that we care for may no longer be around, or we may have a friendship that seems to have fallen off and we don't talk as much anymore. We may lose a loved one. Well, anywho, I know I had shared in one of my previous videos that I had the opportunity to go to China. It was quite an experience, to say the least. I mean, the culture was definitely different than what I'm used to. The food was absolutely amazing, and in some instances, I would say even crazy. I mean, who could just walk up and pick up a scorpion and just eat it? I mean, really? Well, anywho, aside from the culture and the beautiful scenery, I had an opportunity to receive an amazing revelation about one of I would say one of their bugs that they would have, and it's called a silkworm. The silkworm is actually the worm in which we get silk from, and to see their whole process was absolutely amazing. What happens is there's the larva in the silkworm, it begins to, of course, grow similar to the lifespan of a caterpillar, and then once it reaches a certain stage, it actually winds itself up in a cocoon that it makes from silk. Well, after it gets, fully transitioned into the cocoon, it begins to nibble itself right out of the top of it, and then it sets itself free. Now, silkworm is kind of on the chubby side, so it's not able to really fly, but yet and still it survives. Well, then I learned that something neat happens. There is actually a possibility of two silkworms coming together. And what they do is they kind of go through life together, and then just as they transition and it's time for them to wind themselves in the cocoon, they wind each other, they bind themselves together. They began to wrap the cocoon around each other, and it's actually twice as strong as a single bound cocoon. Well, the interesting thing about this particular process is that as they began to grow and they get bigger and bigger within this one cocoon, they lose out on having the space to set themselves free, and without them realizing it, their fate awaits them and they die. Now, what I think is so unique about this instance is that it reminded me of times in our lives where we hold on to someone or do not allow them to be free, and then we don't realize that we hinder ourselves as well as the other person. Sometimes you want to be in a relationship that you really enjoy that person's company, they have great conversation, but maybe you argue way too much, and then you're beginning to despise them or resent even being in a relationship with that person. Well, instead of being able to set them free and allow you to maybe come back at a later time or speak on a lesser basis, you want to stay very close to them, and then you become miserable and they become miserable. Well, I also said that I lost my mother recently. Definitely the most saddest thing I've ever encountered in my life, but I could also relate in this scenario, the silkworms. Because in the absence of my mother, where it may seem as if I would die and become depressed, I am so thankful to God that in her being able to set us free, it enabled us to live, that we will now be able to grow and be nurtured through our own individual life experiences. So sometimes, although separation seems a little bit lonely, it may seem that way, it's not necessarily meant to be that way all the time. It just may simply be for a season to allow you as well as the other person the opportunity at a better and a more prosperous life. Again, this is Aqueela, the Inspirationalist of Belief LLC. I hope, as always, that you live one day, one moment, 1 minute at a time, and I always hope to see you you on the other side of happy.